coming to you from North Atlanta Studios and brought to you by Mesmerize Media. It's the Advantage of Adversity podcast. And now, here's your host, Glenn Carver.
Hey everyone, it's Glenn Carver, your host for the Advantage of Adversity podcast, filming at the North Atlanta Studios, produced by Mesmerize Media. And as you know, the mission of this podcast is to highlight people with inspiring stories who have been through either personal or maybe personal and or professional adversity. And in spite of that adversity, they've made the decision, they've chosen to find the opportunity, maybe even the advantage in the adversity. And I've got a wonderful guest today, a gentleman who's seen some personal and professional adversity in his life. He happens to be a great friend of mine, actually more than a friend, really a foxhole buddy. And a foxhole buddy is someone who's there for you in the trenches when you're in war, when you go to battle. And I'm a good friend, my dear friend, Tom DiGregorio is here today. And you probably, if you live in Metro Atlanta, unless you've lived under a rock for the past 2 decades, you've seen Tom DiGregorio on TV, you've heard his voice on radio, you've seen his trucks all over town. He is the founder and president of AquaGuard Foundation Solutions. AquaGuard. Okay, I'll stick to speaking. But Tom started, I'm gonna cheat here and read a little bit of his bio for you. But he started AquaGuard in 1995. It seems like it was yesterday. And the AquaGuard team built one of the largest and most highly respected and award-winning basement waterproofing and foundation repair companies in the Southeast, I would say, on the planet. Tom was named the Atlanta Metro Chamber's Business Person of the Year in 2015. And Tom and AquaGuard have frequently been endorsed by Dave Baker's Home Fix-It show, which I'm sure you've all seen. It's fantastic. He serves as the founding member and executive advisory board member for Kennesaw State University's renowned Entrepreneurship Center, because Tom is a phenomenal entrepreneur. And he was also featured in 2016 for his business acumen on their show, The Shrimp Tank, not the Shark Tank, the Shrimp Tank. And one of Tom's proudest accomplishments is being named in 2018 to the Must Ministries Board of Directors, which is a massive accomplishment. That's an incredible organization. But really, more importantly than all of that, he's a good friend, and he's a great friend, and he's a Porsche guy. Tom, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Glenn.
And I love your Martini Racing
Thank you.
Porsche shirt.
Yeah.
So
it's after my Martini racing car.
Yes, you have a beautiful Porsche race car at Road Atlanta with the Martini livery, and I've had the pleasure of riding in it, and I did get nauseous.
Yes, but you kept it all in.
I did. Out of respect for you and your car, I did not throw up.
Thank you so much.
But that is a phenomenal experience. So I'll plug Trip Campbell and the driving club real quickly at Road Atlanta. Just an incredible community of racers and car guys, and just love that ecosystem.
Yeah, he's done a great job at the driving club up at Road Atlanta.
Yeah, he really, really has. But back to you.
Okay.
So publicly, thank you, Tom. You're a dear friend of mine. You've been there for me and my family in our darkest days, and it means our relationship and friendship means the world to me. And I just want to thank you
My pleasure.
for being who you are.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure, and giving back is something that has been kind of my motto here, since I realized how important it was, especially when it comes to building a company.
Yeah, great. Well, I tell my son Grant all the time. I say, Grant, you're a good human. Tom, you're a good human.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. So let's jump in. Let's go back in time. First of all, where are you from? You ain't from Georgia. You ain't a Georgia boy.
No, a lot of people wonder where I'm from. I grew up in a small town in Massachusetts called Sturbridge, about 60 miles west of Boston.
Okay.
And for some reason, I don't know, I never had the Pak the Ka accent.
No, you don't.
My brothers and sisters do. They're still all up there. I moved down here in 88.
That's why they allowed you to migrate, because you didn't have the accent.
I don't know, but people can tell when they hear me talk that I'm not from around here, but they don't necessarily pinpoint me to Massachusetts. But I think I spent all my summers in Rhode Island, and that's a twang of its own. So
Sure it is.
I think the two kind of cancel themselves out.
Okay.
So I've got some kind of hybrid accent.
Okay. Well, I think we all do.
Yeah.
So how did you find Georgia?
Well, I graduated from Boston University and started with a company out of BU. And after 5 years there, I got transferred down here. I was in this management training program. I knew when I got out of college that I was wanting to be, I guess you'd say, an entrepreneur.
Sure.
This opportunity told me that I could be the president and general manager of my own company if I went through the management training program. I did that. I became the manager of this high-end carpet and upholstery cleaning company. I started, by the way, with a 4-year degree out of Boston University on my hands and knees cleaning, carpeting, and upholstery.
I love it.
So my friends
Nice.
my friends were going off to Xerox and digital, and I something about this captured my heart and my attention, and ultimately took that office over and was the first manager to do $1 million, which offered me the opportunity to come and open up my own office. In 87, they told me I was going to be transferred. They told me I was going to Long Island. And at the 11th hour, they said, "What do you think about Atlanta?"
Wow.
Now, I didn't know anything about Atlanta. My wife at that time was from South Florida, so she felt great because we're kind of halfway home to Florida.
Sure.
So we came to Atlanta in 88. I spent 5 more years with this company, and ultimately it didn't get me where I wanted to go, but the training that I got
It's indispensable.
was the reason I am who I am today.
Wow.
So I did a few things when I resigned from that company in the credit and financial services world. I did a little bit of indoor air quality and its effects on human health. And then I got introduced by a friend of mine to this waterproofer guy in Woodstock.
Okay.
And he's what I call your small town Billy Bob Redneck contractor.
Sure.
And he convinced me that there was a major market in Atlanta for new construction waterproofing. He had a little repair company that were fixing existing structures.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Tom, they're building a lot of homes here. In fact, they're building close to 30,000 homes a year here back in the early 90s. And right on through 2000 and beyond." So I sold my BMW. I bought a pickup truck. I bought a trailer and a spray rig, and I partnered with this guy.
Sure.
And I was doing strictly new construction.
Wow.
I realized within about 8 months of that relationship that we were not cut from the same cloth.
How so?
Well,
what did you realize?
Well,
work ethic or
work
values
ethic,
or
integrity, selling this, installing that,
integrity,
paying his guys with checks at the end of the week that he knew were going to bounce, but had an arrangement with a check cashing place. So if he was running behind on it. So anyway, I couldn't do it anymore. I had literally I dissolved the partnership. I walked away with my equipment and literally 2 builders.
Wow.
And I said, you know what? I'm going to do this on my own.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it started in January of 95.
Awesome.
We were officially AquaGuard Waterproofing Contractors, Inc. And we were doing strictly new construction.
Okay.
In doing new construction, there's not a lot of money in it. Your average $500,000 home, believe it or not, might have at that time $400 that the builder spent on damp proofing the foundation. I tried to sell them waterproofing, which was probably more like $2,000, but it came with a warranty that protected the homeowner. Builders weren't interested in any of that. They're on the hook for 1 year when it comes to the foundation. Yeah. So it was at that point I realized nothing is being done right in new construction stages to protect this foundation from water or any other structural issues. And I knew there was going to be a repair market in this town forever. So I slowly started weaning myself from the new construction
light bulb
into the repair division, because really the homeowners are the one that really needed us.
Right.
And when I got into the contracting world, I wasn't a contractor. I was a finance and marketing major. And a lot of the contractors in this town, probably most towns, they're technically smart. They kind of know what they're doing, but a lot of them are business stupid. They're not, they don't understand customer service.
Right.
they're not necessarily leaders. Their daddy was a carpenter, or their granddaddy
Sure.
was whatever trade they were in. They've learned it. They thought, I'll become a businessman. Well,
It's the E-Myth by Michael Gerber.
yeah. So, I mean, I realized early on when I recognized what this industry was all about, the whole contracting industry, that if I simply said what I was going to do and then did what I said, I'd be way ahead of everybody just doing that.
Absolutely.
And I also realized there wasn't a lot of integrity and caring in the contracting world, even still to this day, I think, unfortunately. So our first slogan was a service company with integrity and a contractor who cares.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's kind of how we started. It was me and one technician. And as you know, fast forwarding about 2.5 years ago, I sold the company to an amazing company called Groundworks.
Yes, you did.
And we had about 235 employees at the time we sold, and we were doing just a little over $45 million.
Wow. Unbelievable. I love it. Textbook entrepreneurial success story. Just phenomenal.
It's been quite a ride.
I know.
A lot of bumps on that ride,
I
as
know.
you know.
Well, major business lesson for those of you listening: find your target market, know who your customer is. So you shifted gears from the builder to the homeowner.
Yeah,
that's when everything changed for you.
Well, the margins were better. Homeowners could really appreciate the extra service and the quality and the integrity and the communication and all that.
It's their home. It's their
home. Yeah. It's typically the home's, typically their biggest investment, in their lives. So protecting it is what we've been doing for almost 30 years now.
Wow. Fantastic. And doing it as well as anybody in the Milky Way.
Absolutely.
Milky Way. So speaking of adversity, you mentioned bumps in the road. Let's talk about adversity. Let's dive in. Okay. Personal adversity, business adversity. As an adult, what have you experienced outside of building AquaGuard? What kind of adversity have you experienced and passed through that's really shaped who Tom is?
Well, let's start, I guess, on the personal level first. And of course, I was running the business at the time, which obviously created a lot of stress and heartache. But the mother of my kids, at 45 years old, passed away from kidney cancer. She was diagnosed the year before, a year and a half before, 17 months later, with everything we could do, including clinical trials. It was a very aggressive kidney cancer. And I'd never really had any major experience with cancer. It was always something that happened to somebody else.
It always is until it happens to you.
But at 45 years old, we lost her. My kids were 14 and 18. My son literally graduated from Harrison High School here on a Saturday. And his mom's goal, although she was literally upstairs and pretty comatose at that point, just wanted to be here for his graduation. And although she couldn't attend, after the graduation, he came up, she actually saw him, acknowledged the graduation, and 2 days later she passed. So it was an incredibly emotional experience, obviously losing your spouse, the mother of your kids.
Sure, of course.
And she passed in our home in my arms. So it is an experience I'll never forget. And of course, you always worry about the impact on your kids. And at 14 and 18, they certainly had plenty of time with their mom. So from that point forward, it was, always trying to be everything I could to them.
Of course.
Knowing that their mom wasn't in the picture. And I was spoiled. I had my dad, which we're going to talk about in a minute. He lived to 84 and my mom lived till 90. So to lose your parents at a young age is hard. So I feel, heartfelt for my kids, to this very day.
Yeah. It can be traumatic. I mean, it can cause PTSD.
Absolutely. So that was in 2004. We were about, that would be about 9 years into the business, and we were really starting to ramp up. And we started doing a lot of advertising, and I was putting a lot of money because as people know, AquaGuard has really become a brand in this, and it didn't start that way, but it started out with some steady advertising, television and radio, and then building a reputation through the quality of our work and word of mouth. So we were really starting to get things going in 2005. 06. And unfortunately, what happened, people who are here might remember that we were in the middle of a 3.5-year drought. Now, I was
Not good for your business.
Not good. I was known as a waterproofing company.
Yes.
And although we were doing foundation repair, and when there are drought conditions, foundation repair actually increases. Because the soil shrinks up and the foundations settle because the soil loses its ability to hold the load.
Makes sense.
But we really weren't known as well as a foundation repair company. So we suffered, and then of course in 08 with the crash. So I was throwing all this money and resources into people. We had built up to about a little over 60 people at that point, and we were doing a little over $6 million. And all of a sudden the writing was on the wall. The leads were drying up radically. Of course,
No pun intended.
the economy was crashing, so people weren't spending the money they had, and I had to make some very, very tough decisions.
Sure.
Right around 08. And so I basically took 65 employees and I had to let 35 of them go. We cut the company in half, sat down with the 30 that remained, put them in a room and said, guys, this is what's going on. Okay. We're going to make this work.
Yeah.
Come hell or high water. We're going to do it right here with this team. We're going to get through this. But I asked everybody to take a pay cut.
Yeah,
everybody had a 25% pay cut. I wasn't paying, paid sick days, vacations, and holidays. I had to cut all of that out. I had to go. I called all my vendors and said, listen, I simply can't pay you on time. I want to pay you. I'm going to pay you, but you need to work out a payment plan for me. I borrowed money from my mom. I borrowed $80,000 from my mom. And I cashed in my life insurance policies, which was about another, they were the whole life policies. Sure. I had accumulated about another $80,000 to $90,000, and threw it all in. And then, to compound the problem, I lost my dad, and my dad was my mentor, my hero, my best friend. And I was crushed.
Sure.
So here we are, the business. I mean, I was letting everybody in the company know we're going to make this happen. But inside, when your head hits the pillow at night, you're wondering, are we going to be able to pull this through?
Of course.
At the same time, I lost my dad. I was also in a marriage at the time, which was not a healthy one. And the amount of stress and anxiety that I was experiencing was beyond what I thought I could handle. I reconnected with God.
Sure.
I
Good for you.
got saved and baptized a second time.
What year was this?
This was in 09.
Okay.
And the strangest thing, because when you're holding on to a business and you're holding on to your sanity, you're holding, and you're trying so hard, and the thought of losing it is overwhelming.
Of course it is.
So you push even harder. But what I realized, fortunately, was that if it was God's plan for me to make it, it was going to be God's plan.
Right.
And that if for any reason or some reason I didn't make it, the company didn't make it, I would have lost my house and my car and all the things that I had.
Sure.
But I realized that I was going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I kind of let go of this. It's almost like, a little kid hugs its puppy and it hugs, it loves it so much it hugs it to the point where it starts choking it.
Right, sure.
So I just kind of released a little bit.
That's hard to do.
And believe it or not, things started changing. Call it what you will, but the rain started coming back in 09. And we had, developed an even tighter nucleus to get through all of this.
Of course you did.
And then the rain started coming, and we slowly but surely pulled ourselves out of it. In 2010, I brought in a partner, which I swore I'd never do because I'd had the one prior,
Right. You had the partner
and I
experience.
was in one prior to starting AquaGuard, and I told myself I'm not going to do a partnership. I'm going to be the only idiot in this scenario. I remember saying,
Yeah.
but the gentleman who called me was somebody I had met through the network I was in, and I'd known him for almost 10 years. He had this exact same company as I did and was in the same network in Cleveland, Ohio. He knew of me because we would see each other in conventions and training, and he asked if I would consider bringing him on as a partner. Well, actually, as a general manager. He said, I'll be a general manager for you for a year. I'll prove to you what I can do. And if all goes well, I would like the opportunity to earn into or buy into the company. Long story short, we did just that. His name is Joe Rusk.
Yes, I've met Joe. Wonderful guy.
He and I think we're different than your typical partners. I mean, we never, in the year that he was general manager, we never had cross words. We just seemed to think alike. We had the same morals, the same ethics.
It's incredible.
We realized that together we could bring this company a lot further, a lot faster. And that's exactly what we did. We went, at that time he came on board, we were probably just doing, I don't know, maybe 8 million or so.
Okay.
And by 2020, we were doing $45 million. Wow.
That's a quantum leap.
So that's a quantum leap.
He was godsend for you.
And most importantly, the way we did it was through a culture that we created and lived by. We had core values. Mm-hmm. We followed the book called Traction. By the way,
I was going to bring that up. You're
okay.
a big fan of Traction and EOS, correct?
Yes, and it literally changed our company. It allowed us to morph and scale, because scaling, this is where most entrepreneurs lose it is in scaling. And scaling properly to where you don't compromise your people, compromise your quality, compromise your integrity, right. Compromise your goals. We implemented it ourselves, and I give Joe a lot of credit for that. And together we grew this thing, and we were approached in 2020 during COVID. And COVID was a real challenge for us because, remember, people were locked in their homes.
Sure.
We're wondering whether people are going to spend money, never mind have us in their home. We learned so much during COVID from doing virtual appointments. We would tell customers, hey, you don't want to go in the basement, just let us in. We'll do our inspection. And then we would do Zoom video presentations.
Wow, good for you.
We learned how to stage our warehouse better and stage our crews better. Yes. And then we got approached by a gentleman named Matt Malone with Groundworks. Sure. He was very, very familiar with us. Had called a few times before, and I simply wasn't ready to sell. So I thought.
What an honor, though, to get the phone call.
It was. Well, he'd been trying for a few years now.
Yeah.
But I knew the way the industry worked. And I knew that I needed to continue to build our profit, or what's called EBITDA. Sure. Because you get, typically when you sell a company, you get a multiple times your EBITDA.
Correct.
And I remember sitting in my office playing this voicemail that Matt had left. Hey, I'd love to talk. Yeah. And I played it to my CPA and financial advisor, and one of my very best friends to this day. In fact, he's the executor of my will, Kendall Strickland.
Wow.
He said, Tommy, he says a meeting's free. Let's just take the meeting.
Yeah.
So we did. And we had heard
some phone call. Was it Zoom?
No. It was all very confidential. He flew in with a few of his key people. We met at the airport in a hotel. We don't want anybody knowing anything. Sure. Because I didn't really know where this was going to go. And at the end of that 6-hour meeting,
Wow.
I was so impressed with what they were doing and how they were doing it, incorporating the same core values that we built our company on,
Key.
taking care of our people, taking care of our customers, and quite honestly, they made an offer I simply couldn't refuse.
Sure.
I could
That's
have
the best kind of
well,
offer.
let me rephrase that. I would have refused it if there wasn't all the other things that came with
That
it.
supported it. Right.
It was like it was a pinch me moment,
Yeah.
actually, because they made us an offer that day. And they said, "You go home and think about it. We're good either way you want to do it."
That explains the 4 Porsches.
Yeah, no, that came about 2 years later.
That's funny.
So anyway, so that and I reinvested with Groundworks, so I'm a partner. I'm one
Good
of the
for you.
founding partners. So now, although I'm not involved with the day-to-day at all anymore, I still own the building, and they're paying me rent for the next 10 years. But
My buddy Glenn says that doesn't suck.
no, it doesn't suck. So so now I get to be a cheerleader.
Still do your
They're
commercials.
paying me to be the face and the voice, which really doesn't amount to a whole lot. I still do the Dave Baker show,
great.
4 to 6 times a
It's brand
year.
reinforcement.
I do Atlanta and Company, go down to NBC Studios and do a show once or twice a month. But that's about it. So overall, I couldn't be happier. The Groundworks has done an amazing job in continuing to grow the company. They're not a company that just buys companies and then lets them go. Fortunately, they didn't need to pour a lot into us, which is why they wanted us so much, because we were really well established and we had all the moving parts in the right places.
All the systems.
But they're doing $10 million more today than when I sold it. So they're continuing to grow, and quite honestly, I think this is easily a $75+ million market in our industry. So I get to be a big cheerleader, and it wasn't like ripping the Band-Aid off when you sell your company. Like, now what do I do? Fortunately, the last several years of owning the company, we were so well established and so well set up that I didn't have to deal with the day-to-day then either. So I got involved in other things. I was there every day, but I certainly wasn't having to deal with a lot of the things that I'd spent the previous 20 years dealing with.
Sure.
So when we sold, it wasn't like, now what do I need to do? In fact, I'm busier now than I've ever been. I ask myself all the time, I don't know. It's a good thing I don't have a job, because I don't know how I'd have time for it.
That's great. Great position to be in.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back in time to some adversity. When I wrote my book, Stand in the Heat, I had the pleasure of interviewing Dave Liniger, the founder of Remax. Phenomenal story, phenomenal entrepreneur. Your stories are very similar, because there was a point in time where he was about to shut the door. He had a laundry list of vendors he couldn't pay. And he brought his core team together and said, look, if we stick together, including his vendors, we can make this happen. All you guys will get rich if you'll stick with me, talking to his vendors. But when Tom DiGregorio has to fire or let go 30+ people, that's got to be brutal for your spirit. How did you deal with that personally? Because obviously you had good people on your team. What was that like for you?
Oh, it was, with everything else going on, it was emotionally, draining. But I realized I had no choice. I mean, it's kind of like, when they tell you to put the oxygen mask on first,
exactly.
I had to take care of the company first.
Right.
If I lost the company, then everybody was out.
Right.
So, it was a extremely emotional time to not only let those people go, but then to take the 30 that remained and rally together and say, hey, we got to do this, and keep everything else going on, from my dad to things going on at home, to the economy, not knowing if leads were going to come or not knowing, what the future held. You got to keep all of that in, and you got to put a face on when you walk in that door.
That's right.
That says, we're going to get shit done.
Yeah.
And that's what we did.
That's awesome.
But it was quite incredible. It helped shape. It really kind of directed who I was
Sure.
by going through those times.
And look what happened. Look how it turned out.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward from there to 2009. You got baptized again. What did that do for you? What did that do for your spirit, for your faith? And why did you do it at that moment in time?
Well, when my first wife, the mother of my kids, passed, I grew up Catholic, and probably anybody who grew up Catholic probably shaking their head at the same time I am. It did more to sour me against religion. And then, all of a sudden, my wife was gone, and my kids, we even did an emergency confirmation for my 14-year-old daughter who wasn't due to get confirmed until the next year. And
Okay.
the church agreed to do it. But when she passed, I think we all, my kids and me, became spiritually, I won't say dead, but it was definitely shaken.
Sure,
It's
of
like,
course.
why did this happen? Why
Right.
did she's 45, and death happens every day, but it didn't happen to us. So, and I realized, and then my daughter, who was going to church, she was going to North Metro here in Marietta on Barrett Parkway, and she was doing Sublime, and I was happy she was involved with the church. And then I remember one day thinking, you know what, I need to get back involved with the church, and kind of like the mourning period was over, and I don't really know, but I reconnected and got closer and closer with God and my relationship, and it just has a way of changing everything.
Sure.
And I remember that revelation of, you know what, if I don't make it with this company, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to be okay.
Right. That's
I'll
right.
get through it. I'll do it again somehow,
There you
some
go.
way. And it was like when I let go of that grip,
Sure.
everything started to kind of fall into place. I was thinking clearer, and it was like I had I guess you could call it my life preserver.
Yeah.
In my faith, and it just kind of continued to evolve from there.
That's a great story. My faith has certainly grown immensely. I mean, orders of magnitude from where I was going through my past couple of years. So thanks for sharing that. So let's talk about, from 95, you started AquaGuard to the day that you sold it. What are some of the key business lessons you've learned as a quintessential entrepreneur? What are some of the key lessons you've learned? Obviously, you read Traction, you're a founder of EOS, but what are some of the major core values you had as a company and as a team that have allowed you to grow?
Well, when it comes to growing a company, I realized that was going to be way over my head years and years ago, that my success is completely dependent upon the success of my people.
Okay.
So it wasn't that I didn't know that, but I really started focusing on how can we make our people more successful, better training, follow through training, creating a culture. Honestly, until about 150 employees into it, there were two things that I did routinely every day, and I would get a report every month of all my employees' birthdays and their anniversaries.
That's great.
So I would call them on their birthday and wish them happy birthday, and I would call them on their anniversaries and wish them happy
That's
anniversary, and I
fantastic.
would spend time with them. And it was funny because a lot of times, I had to, because it got to a lot of phone calls,
Sure.
and I later just did it just on anniversaries. It was just too much,
Sure.
With a couple hundred employees.
Be a
But
part-time job.
it was funny. I would call some employees a lot of times, the people that are in the, our production guys in the field, and they'd be getting a call from me, and they kind of like, hello, and they'd have no idea why Tom was calling them.
Yeah.
And and you could just hear it in their silence.
You feel the tension.
And then I would, break the tension and wish them happy birthday or happy anniversary. And I want to tell you, the feedback that I got from that, or in the early stages, they would come up to me and say, you know what? That meant more to me than you can possibly imagine.
It's incredible.
And then the other thing I would do, and did it right up until, I wasn't there anymore, is I would take all my key people and I would, over at the end of the year, Christmas, I would give them bonuses, but I would go and get Christmas cards. And I always got the humorous ones, the funny ones.
Sure.
And then I would fill that card up with writing. I mean, it was paragraphs for each one of them.
Wow.
And they would come up to me and they'd say, listen, I really appreciate the bonus. That was nice, but I want to tell you something. What you wrote in this card meant more to me than any dollar amount you could ever give me. Yeah. And that's just kind of who I am and how I built this company.
I love it.
The people knew who I was. They knew that they could come and talk to me.
Yes.
I mean, there was something I would say to every single person that would come in the door. I would sit them down. They weren't used to that either, because when we were departmentalized, we had managers of each division or each department. It's like, well, why do I need to talk to Tom? Well, they especially the ones in the office, they'd come in and we'd sit down and I'd welcome them. And I would say, listen, I want you to understand something. We're not perfect around here. We make mistakes. We're human. If you ever run into anything that you don't like, understand, or agree with, I want you to come and talk to me. I expect you to come and talk to me.
Right.
Here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to go talk to somebody else, a coworker, and start doing this.
Right.
Because number one, you're destroying the very company we're all trying to build. Number two, they can't do anything about it. Number three, it's not going to change unless you bring it up to somebody who can. So in the early stages, I insisted they come and see me. In the later stages of the company, I'd say, you're welcome to come and talk to me anytime, but you start with your direct supervisor. And then I would say, listen, you may have an issue with your direct supervisor and you don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And they'd say, well, a lot of people, with the mentality of, well, I'm not going to talk about him because I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get let go if I'm sure. And I said, no. That's not the way it works around here. If any manager or leader around here is doing something that doesn't fit in with our core values, then they're the one at risk, not you.
Exactly.
However, if you go and you do something different or talk to somebody else about them and consider it gossip, now you're on the hook.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Everything we do here, we do for a reason. And you see, and I would point to we put all of our core values on the wall.
I love it.
And we hired and fired and lived by them.
By the core values.
Absolutely. So, I think, especially when you're scaling a company, your people need to know they can trust you and that they can talk to you.
Absolutely.
And that kind of glue makes things happen.
Okay, folks, second big lesson. Hope you picked that up. Sometimes emotional currency is more powerful than financial currency. And Tom proved to his people that he cares. People know, they know you care. You invested your own personal time. Mm-hmm. You invested in their emotional bank accounts when you made the phone calls and wrote the paragraphs and the cards. And it was free.
Yeah.
It was your time, which is very valuable, but it was free. It wasn't a marketing line on the budget.
No. And it was invaluable.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. That's really phenomenal. So what else? So as we wrap up here, some closing questions. What is Tom excited about right now besides racing his Porsche at Road Atlanta? What are you excited about? And what are some next steps? What's the next chapter for Tom D?
Well, once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur. So when I sold the company, I had to continue to do things. So we, as you know, bought a house in Costa Rica.
Yes.
We fell in love with this area. and the market was incredible down there. I was blessed to have the house I bought was still in construction stages, so I bought it at that stage, and I got to know my builder and my realtor. And these guys have both become
It's been
very, very
waterproofed?
good friends. Well, yeah, they don't. This one doesn't have a basement, but they claim they don't have waterproofing problems down there. But in any case, so I'm doing some land development down there. I bought many mountaintop lots, all overlooking the Pacific Ocean.
Nice.
And I've built homes. I've sold homes. I've got 5 more lots I just
Wow, I didn't know
purchased,
that.
and building I'm going to
Tom
start
the
2
Builder.
more. Yeah, well, it's a great financial situation. I'm investing in that area, and so that's good. I'm invested in some private companies here. I continue to mentor. I mentored the entire time through AquaGuard, and there's a few people that I continue to mentor to this day that are trying to grow and scale their businesses. So I'm excited about that. I like doing a lot more of what I want to do and less of what I have to do. It's kind of was always my definition of success. Travel.
You definitely travel.
I travel, and so I
travel with you through Facebook, by the way.
Yeah, thanks.
Vicariously.
Yes, I've heard that before with a few people, but at this stage here, listen, I've worked my butt off.
Sure.
From 22
You've
years
earned
old,
it, brother. You've earned it.
So at this point here, I want to enjoy life
Yes.
and all it has to offer,
Yes.
and trying to stay sane in a world that's not quite so sane right now.
Understatement. Another podcast.
Another podcast.
Yeah.
But I'm a very blessed man,
Yes, you
and
are.
I'm just happy to be here, and just want to continue to give back any way I can.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm blessed to be your friend. Thank you
you
for being on the show. This has been phenomenal. So much wisdom and so many lessons that people can learn from your journey along the trail of entrepreneurship. Love your spirit, love who you are. And I wish for you tremendous success in the future and prosperity and passion, and for many, many years.
Thank you. And the very same to you, Glenn.
Yeah, we'll track each other's success.
Count on it.
All right, folks, another great conversation with Tom DiGregorio coming to you from the North Atlanta studios, produced by Mesmerize Media. Hey, if you like this show, if you like the content, please consider sharing it. And I would love for you to hit the subscribe button so that you can be, you'll be posted on upcoming podcasts and great guests. And I just love doing this for you, and hope you guys have a phenomenal day.